An extra-dimension storm broke out on Earth several decades ago. After that, many mystical creatures of other dimensions were discovered were gods of the ghosts, of the werewolves, of the angels, of the demon of. All these creatures are divided into 4 legendary and peak deadly classes, and their capacities and their destructive power far exceeds the wildest expectations. People belong to the lower class, the mortals, but by strengthening the body and the mind you can increase your class. In addition to improving spiritual power, there is another way to considerably accelerate evolution. You must drive out creatures of other dimensions and take their wrist. However, the places where they live are very dangerous. To go there involves a dead risk. The action takes place in a mathematics course, and the teacher calls Chuck on the board. The whole class watched Chuck, but he didn't answer. But he did not respond because he slept covering himself with a path manual. The path professor said that the former director had a very high opinion of. The director said that there would be 2 types of genius, the first pet shop type, the second, and everyone. Suddenly Chuck woke up with a start and got up from his chair. He shouted that he came out of the class, and the professor, who was called Flex, said that he's seen that the director was wrong about him. The life of the main character has completely changed when a mysterious phone fell between. The guy has completely given up studying and improving, and all because of the game on the phone. To start playing, you must first turn it on with a drop. Once this drop has been reached, you must click on the application icon. Using an additional drop of blood, you can create your own character. By increasing the skill of the character, Chuck improves in reality. It is sure, fast, and practical. In this game, you are allowed to kill deadly creatures like the powerful. There are many geniuses in the community that have developed spiritual powers at the age of 16. But it seems that Chuck is the only one to be able to improve his mind thanks to meditation, and the 16 without any external help. At first, all the teachers and rays from the hero's school thought that he would certainly succeed in the future. With a force like hers, it would not be difficult for him to win first place during the next skill and combat test. However, a month ago, the unexpected. In the school gymnasium, there were fights between the strongest, who were trying to show what they were capable of. Chuck was the most remarkable of everyone when suddenly a girl. The guy thought he had already seen himself, but the girl told him of the ATT. The main character was not going to do the ceremony with her, and to launch the attack in. However, this heroine was not kindly. She struck him in the stomach, and he flew to several. They looked at him devastated and remained silent. People did not expect this from her since she knocked out in a second. His girl was really strong, and she was called Or. After Diana and defeated Chuck at once, he completely abandoned, and does not sleep, and only plays all day. It seems to Flex that if he continues to play games like this, it will not lead to good things. At that time, Chuck was calmly sitting on the playground and playing the phone. He killed monsters and recovered crystals. The crystals of the defeated years absorbed by the player affects him and improves his skill. And in the game, the user can see various characteristics, which is impossible in life. Of a man improved thanks to meditation and suffering, he would hardly be able to advance even in a few years. Unfortunately, the crystals that fall into the game cannot be transferred to the real world, so Chuck could live happy forever by simply selling unnecessary crystals. Suddenly, Shock was sitting calmly, but he was attacked by a powerful red mint. His speed and strength are obviously much higher than that of ordinary ants. The main character could defeat him if he had more than. However, the monsters are increasingly number. Suddenly, a young girl arrives on the badminton field. His girl had a very beautiful name. She was called Les. Chuck hoped that she was not going to him because she couldn't let her discover the secret of her phone, otherwise the guy would have big in. Alas, Chuck was unlucky because she had been looking for him for half a day. He wanted to offer him something went. Like the final exam to test the combat skill arrived soon. Jessica really hoped that the hero would agree to join his team. The main character looked confused and was surprised that she wanted in. When he started asking Jessica why she wanted you, Jessica replied that she was doing her best to get a high note, so she needed a solid team, and he was exactly what gets Chuck completely despair this loss, and thinks that he cannot become the same again. Jessica began to support him, because she considers him the soil of the school to be an opponent worthy of her. When the guy wondered how to go to Hannah, but it turned out that she had already been transferred to another school. In addition, she is already above the mortal class, and she has suddenly disappeared. That she appeared, the girl seemed to have come only to fight. Jessica thought that Chuck and Fried had known each other for a long time, so she wanted to settle her accounts with. But the hero replied that it was impossible because he had never met him before. Maybe Jessica has just thought about it too much. Came to the question of the team. Chuck was not at all opposed to the idea of clinging to it if she agreed. They agreed on this point. Jessica found 2 other members of the team. Now he trained every 4 daily practical exercises, so that during the exam they act in harmony, and this. At that time Chuck played on the phone and fought monsters, but unfortunately However, the lock was not upset, and decided to check the characteristics of the house. Suddenly Chuck took the crystal, and it was no longer the same as before. It was somehow. His crystal contained the legendary competence of spiritual power. Chuck wondered what competence he could get an ant, and it turned out that he obtained the point of a level vital. Thus the next day the Jessica team met at the center. The rest of the team, when they discovered that Chuck would be with them, who did not believe in. However, Guns know that the hero is strong, but he is not known for a month, and it will be very difficult for him to come back to his level. One of the team members said that their goal was to win first place during the combat aptitude test, and who feared that Chuck would not be the best choice. He therefore suggests inviting his very old friend. His test greatly influences your future life. It has a direct impact on admission to a prestigious school, and on the use more. Your security depends on the strength of your partners. There is nothing to blame it. Jessica should be indeed an exceptional fighter, but she still thinks that Chuck is the best option. After these words, Cedric suggested taking a small test whose result would determine if Shocking agreed or. You were very simple, as Cedric said. Since he is the nearest of them, the hero will have to fight him, and if he manages to win, to join. The young man was not against this fight, but he thought it would be bad if someone was injured in this. The children of the school have powers of measures, but the dry figures are boring, so they are fighting the one who moves back. Cedric uses the Thunderclaps culture method. He specialized in power exhibits, and Thunderless competence is a good. Yes, Chuck practiced meditation through suffering, but he never bought vitality crystals to accelerate his cultivation. Heroes suggested that his opponent use the strength counter of the school better, to which Cedric replied that he supposedly. Chuck's feeling uncomfortable, and Rise saying that he was really afraid, even if in reality he was just afraid to kill him. Suddenly Cedric of the theater of agreement with him. He went to the force of the school. Cedric asked him who would strike first, but the hero. Then Cedric decided to strike the first and mouse before. He struck the dynamometer with a fairly strong blow, and the score showed a force of 7. There is a slight difference between this indicator and the statistics of the game, but Chuck did not think that the differences would be too significant when he found this mysterious phone he had a power of. Cedric was satisfied with his results and invited the guy to the next. At that time Flex took himself in the school. He became interested in who used the room outside class hours and decided to throw a blow. Flex decided not to rush to watch the guns. Then he saw Chuck succeed in his. When he supported the counter, the screen indicate 10A. The team did not expect such a force on their part, is simply they're watching with surprise. Flex do not believe that they can eliminate 10 units, and did not understand how it could happen. Flex began to believe that he was sleeping constantly in class, because he trained very shocked to hit the counter with a punch, in addition a punch that landed at 3 or 4 centimeters, and leaves the point still in place. Cedric was very angry at having lost against. He also told him that he had been accepted in the team. Cedric shock pushes so that he can knock him again. He used his skill of spiritual power thunder. 7 by 100 save stroke was significantly larger than the previous 11 units fell on the display board. Shock tells him sarcastically that the neck was not bad. After that, Cedric told him that if he couldn't say that they were not ashamed to. To which Chuck wondered if the school would make him pay if the strength senior suddenly broken, and Eric added that if he really broke him, he will pay him. Now the main character was completely calm and decided to hit him with all his might. Cedric thinks that Chuck pretends to be something since this object is designed to measure strength even if it is a model to its ancients with a limit of only 28. But only a few high school students can reach the maximum, and even less can exceed it. I am starting to use his spiritual power competence. To his great surprise, Shock to break this force indicator. For everyone present, it was really extraordinary. The limit of this counter is 20 units, however. That does not mean that it can only bear this value. It will take a spiritual power skill of at least 8 or 9 levels to break la par. It was at this point that the professor remembered the director's words, according to which there are 2 types of. Cedric admired the hero's blow. Now he is forced to pay him, and in addition, they are in the same team and Shock can count on. Jessica found this guy even more interesting than she. It's already in the evening and Chuck returns to. While he walked, he realized that Jessica reminded him that usually people who receive the legendary class considers that he is unworthy to stand next to the death. Frightened of her own initiative to challenge a dead student. The main character thought he had never traveled outside the guide district, so how could he? Suddenly the phone rang from the pocket of. He was the hero's father, and he wanted to invite his son at his marriage. Shock became curious to know with whom he was going to marry, and his father told him to wait to send a photo of the girl. The father sent to the guy a photo of his wife. Her name was in. The ceremony will take place in Cannes in about a week, but Chuck must pass a skill test in only a week, so he still could not go there even if they. The lock is also a souvenir of the metal box for colonies in the clock, but the father did not understand what would he. It was an iron square box of about 30 centimeters on each side, on which a comic bear were also drawn. My father remembered it, and said that it was a box of colonies that he often ate when he was a child, but that the colonies of this brand was no longer available for a long time, so this box probably dragged for a very long time. What a phone found in this box, and is to ask where he. Body white, screen black, no button, about 17-20 centimeters. It was my grandfather's phone. The hero's grandfather was a carpenter during the restoration of the old town of Guide. He duration Paris, many old wooden buildings. He therefore worked for more. One day a well which was dug on a construction site at night was deep. Only a few people made overcome. A low light came out of the well. The workers thought they had found a sort of treasure. But it turned out that it was an old wooden box. There were many cracks on the lid. The light shone through them. There was a phone inside the box at the beginning at Watson, but it was immediately extinguished, and the workers did not have it found the charging connection. The workers were very disappointed and thought that someone just wanted to make a joke by planting a broken phone. Everyone is quickly disinterested, and the grandfather throwing in his bag. My father wanted to change them against a few packets of cigarettes in the workshop, but they said it was worth nothing, so he threw the phone in a box. It is good that my father cannot change them against cigarettes at the time, otherwise he would bite his elbows. The hero's father had a lot to do. He also recalled marriage and hang up. The combat aptitude test will take place there, so Chuck wants to try to look for it if possible. Unfortunately, the hero forgot to ask his father if he could have offended someone in the past. For several days, the guy has been doing the same things. In addition, ordinary days were spent in school. Children were worth their business. Suddenly an unknown has passed with a professional approach and to push. He immediately seemed to be a character, but His strange guy has calmly apologized and launched a rumor. After this rumor, Cedric approached Chuck and apologized to him, telling him that he had been invited by a friend to join his team and that he could not team up with him. The hero hopes Jessica has a rescue plan because such a moment it will be difficult to find a new member for the team. Chuck found the second member of the team's name, by the way, and unfortunately, he was not able to participate in the test with him because he had reasons for. You have already found less. They began to apologize to him, but he told her that he knew everything and that she did not have. He also added that he should apologize because someone wants to take care of him, but they also got involved. Hero advised Jessica to find someone else before it was too late. The girl did not know with whom he had crossed the road, but this man has a huge influence, so she told him to be careful. His test is very important for Chuck. He does not understand where to find a companion and that he can trust when suddenly Professor Flex calls him in his office. There he told her that the commander held a very high position, that his real name was Isaac, and that Chuck did not even know it. It was very strange if he didn't even know him, because when he arrived to make an inspection in the Guide County, he criticized the Zero as simple. The guy at that time did not even realize who was this. The Commonweal. He already held a high position, and is an important military official in the Eastern Zone. The teacher is not sure that Isaac is against the hero, but a sentence on how bad, and those who want to attract the favors of him are ready. Shocked to ask Flex if he had a link with or. It is quite possible, but it can be adjusted later. The hero must now find a team and register for purification. The deadline for submitting applications ends after tomorrow. It cannot therefore be postponed from a second, otherwise Chuck will certainly not happen. Flex recommended a student named Carrie, but in return Chuck must help him get the best score using all his forces. He must be the best of there. Even if Chuck cannot take the first place of his team, it is still better than not being able to participate at all in the test. The main character does not know how to contact Carrie and asks the professor of. After leaving school, he called his father and asked him if he knew something about his. Isaac is the son of Isa, and if his father's wife, he will become the eldest half-brother of the main character. The father also remembered that he would also have a younger half-sister AR. For Chuck it was a shock. Surprisingly, father and children in 6 years have good relations, and he respects it a lot. But perhaps basically they are against their father's marriage to Isa, which is why Isaac and Frank treat him if. Frank can easily defeat Chuck, and because of a sentence from Isaac, he almost lost the opportunity to take the examination. In the past few days, all he had done was to destroy the powerful mint supplies. But apart from the crystal endowed with the competence of spiritual power fall from the first and then nothing received from the other, although it has already killed more than 10, and there was no longer left. After a while, he finally got something. And Shock had an egg with an animal. Mortals rarely have a pet, mostly those who have already reached the legendary class in. It was time to open the egg when suddenly something flew away and settled in the main character. Literally the same thing as settled in you. The voices of the service oath to death resounded in the guy's head, and he did not feel very good. When he woke up, he had a violent headache. And on his hand, he noticed a certain oven imprint. The pet successfully hatched as the hero decided to call him to look at him. But he had problems because he didn't know how in. Shock decided to think about the skill of the summoned and the mint ant, and something like a glove began to appear on. It looks like this glove is the shape of the animal. They say that this improves the characteristics of the user himself, the mint, and very likely increasing his strength. Chuck's house is not suitable to test his strength, so he just thought of throwing a blow. It looked much more scar than in the game. When you saw him, he immediately knew that it was his chance to. The next day, Chuck and Professor Flex went to. Flex said that Carrie likes to show everything, but it is not a bad person. They entered the building, and the young converge showed them to. When he entered his room, he was sitting on the sofa with Pretty. Carrie lets see the professor immediately offered them a glass of sparkling wine, but Flex refused because he was still in his day. Flex presented him Chuck and said that he was very competent and that he would therefore be very useful during the examination. Carrie will allow the hero to join his team because he trusts the teacher. The professor also advised him to discuss with Chuck all the questions related to the test of combat skill. Flex will help them register and Chuck should stay with Carrie for the moment to know him well in recent days. This will allow them to understand each other during the test. As soon as the professor left, Carrie told him that he was the number one of the guided school, what Chuck replied that they were rumors, and that they should not be believed. Carrie answered this by saying that in such a small guide town, there is really no room for a genius, and if he was in fried genius would not have one in one. Moreover, Carrie said that it was not necessary to take a training in coordination, it was enough for him to listen to, and not to intervene, when the time comes, and everything yesterday. Carrie offered a drink to Chuck, and if he could drink the whole bottle, he could choose any girl from the people present. However, Chuck refused by what he does not drink. At that time the guy thought that for the good of a person also worthless the professor was to humiliate himself, this certainly not worth there. Suddenly Carrie and her girlfriend prepare something. He told her to start flirting with. His girlfriend did not stop calling him to do more pleasant things, but the guy did not have time for that. Not the ant with silver wings in the game was very fast, and it was very difficult to vain it. Met the hero continued to watch the phone screen because he was on the point of more. For is it the fact that Carrie's girlfriend read him, and he simply pushed back. Carrie let see such an image able to throw champagne from his mouth. When he and his second girlfriend began to. Unfortunately, the guy still lost against the anthill, with the wings of money perhaps, that if he had not been distracted he would have. His incident impressed Carrie, and Chuck assembled him funny. Any fell and everyone has been going to bed for a long time. Put something to disturb Carrie that night, and he and Chuck played all night without getting anything. Although the flying ants are very strong, they have not yet reached the legendary class, it is therefore possible to kill them, but the wood hero first has at least the opportunity to strike. The point of the vital of Sang 9 can inflict a lot of damage to the flying anthrope Silver Kings, but it takes too much. Since the character of the game is Chuck improving his overwhelming point with a punch, in reality, the character of the game can also synchronize with this improvement, but it is only in the theory of where the hero leads to his phantom boxing shot throughout. At that time Carrie speed on him, and see how he trained, and he also noticed that his force and his applied aptitude was too important. It seemed to Carrie that the guy hidden a kind of talent, but he simply ignored it, and the day of the exam in Viva, and the boys went to school. Shocked to Vermont show with what diligence he had resolved the tasks of X. But Carrie without thinking about the question to choose a random response. The next day Chuck went to the old town of. After the extra dimension storm that broke out years ago, once appeared here, and all around turned into an area. Due to the influence of other dimensions, local animals and plants have also undergone various. The next step in entry exam, which consists in testing combat skill, is about to start. Carrie the others had not yet arrived, so Chuck decided to wait for them and look around. Suddenly someone started calling the guy, and he first thought it was his. However, the call came from a mysterious telephone which controls man. He has no ringtone and never vibrated in. Isudun, who has seen a camera application on his phone. Initially the camera shutter did not rely, and it seemed that the camera function of this phone did not work. But as soon as the hero pointed out his cell phone to the old wall, on which someone's palm was sealed, he immediately got into grain. Now Chuck's phone not only contained the ants' cave, but also the ancient town of. As the hero has nothing to do anyway, he decides to try to. By dropping a drop of blood on the phone screen, the guy is really taken to this. After having traveled a certain distance in the inner part of the ancient city, a creature came to meet him. It was a creature of another dimension, a skeleton soldier. Unfortunately, this soldier was not a friend of the guy and the ATT. Although Chuck is new in this dimension, the speed and strength of the skeleton are not very large. After killing the skeleton, a crystal is immediately falling, which surprised them. By captivating the crystal, there is no pain as terrible as the moment when he received a punch. Thanks to this crystal, he acquired a skill called Skeleton Touch. It is essentially a low-level competence, but which however consumed very little energy. To test your strength, you have to go more. To do this, check to invoke its powerful provides. With the help of his pet, the hero destroyed dozens of skeleton. Shock has already crossed so much, but he found nothing other than this crystal. Suddenly in the distance, the guy noticed a horde of skeleton. Among this crowd, a skeleton stood out for a harm on a horse. Not even a second had passed before this skeleton approaches the famous crutch approached Chuck. He immediately struck with his spear and unraveled the pet of the guy, also injuring the owner himself. The main character was killed, and he did not expect such a speed of such a skeleton. It was probably their part. His opponent was strong for Chuck. He realized that this time he had to avoid facing Friant at the X. But as soon as the guy remembered her, he turned. A girl appeared. It was Friant, and her gaze was not the best. He approached him. He held the USB key to him, saying that she came from Uncle France, that is to say, from the father of. By leaving, the girl warns the man to tell no one that he was related to the family, and told him that because in their family there is no room for mediocrity and the weak as. Chuck thinks Diana is too quick to draw hasty conclusions, since he is not even part of their. Friant left, and finally Carrie's team arrived. Carrie told Chuck since the old Flex himself defended him, he had not to worry about. He could also simply follow him and leave the points reception to the other members of the team, which the guy was happy because he can save his strength. One of the members of the group told Carrie that he did not have to worry because in a place as distant as a guide there was no one exceptional, and he could take first place. Carrie and looked severely and stayed in silent, and the guns promised to make there. However, Chuck noted at that time that Carrie was not going to present them because they were actually tools for. Suddenly one of the guards began to say that the exam was soon to begin, and they asked everyone to approach the inspector examiner of his group. The meeting with Jessica was completely unexpected for. He looked at her with a smile and motioned to wish her good luck. The girl noticed the hero and returned la part to her. 2 minutes in minutes, a shiny blue light begins to emerge from the wall. A portal appeared there where the examiner came from. He said that the essence of the exam was to collect crystals on skeleton soldiers killed. The final note would be determined by the time. Finally, he wished everyone a lot of success, and the students entered the port. Once at another dimension, a battle against the skeleton began to immediately. Other tiers behaved well against the skeleton soldiers, killing some of them in one. Therefore, Chuck had no reason to worry, and he decided at that time to test his assumption. Carrie wanted to watch the hero and the review playing the phone. After that, he started to doubt that there is something special about. By entering the game, the main character saw on the phone that not only the doors of life, but also the location of all the buildings coincided exactly with the point. All this can only mean that all dungeons have a real prototype, so the skeleton rider should also be there. However, to judge by the area already explored, they are still far away. Of the team remained in the examination area, it would probably not meet this thing. Get 6 suggested going further, and Hush began in. He proposed this idea because there was almost no more skeleton in this area, and the rate of their appearance had also dimmed. To there was said that if he wanted to get a perfect score, he had to move on. Shock interrupted to get out of the territory, because it could be dangerous. Sick made good, adding to his words that they had a full plan of the territory, and that the map was also divided into. Met Carrie listened to Sick, because even if something happens to them, the boys occupy Now Chuck is even more worried. He cannot immediately say that there is a monster that awaits them ready to. Until they reached the right of the Zero once again tried to defeat him using the phone, but he didn't believe it. At worst, the guy was ready to catch Carrie and the guarantees contrary again, the skeleton soldiers, and began to fight with them, while Chuck was trying to defeat the of. Unfortunately, the guy cannot defeat him. When he lodges jumps, the rider kills him anyway. It is even stronger than the flying ant with silver wings. However, it is obvious that the rider's skeleton does not maintain great agility all the time. He increases his speed for a while. When he pieces, it is most likely his skill of spiritual power. Unexpectedly, while Chuck played with the sick phone, killed the soldier whose crystal is Taki, immediately calling Carrie, and the main character, considered that it was a timely moment. Since he had scored enough points, he invited him to come back. Sick is again starting to dissuade Carrie, as if he were too early, and that then had nothing to do with Carrie watching his phone. He showed that no dimensions creature of legendary or higher level was recorded nearby. He therefore decided to go even more. Sudden Shock grabbed her hand and began to talk about his sixth sense. Since his childhood, he always felt an unpleasant feeling when he was in danger, and that had never missed him. And that's when this feeling became very strong. Sick united himself and started shouting after the guy, saying that his brother Carrie had taken him with him to help him improve his reputation. The main character answered him, supposedly the idea zone is very small. It is therefore not uncommon for few students to venture beyond the limits. In addition, they have marked a lot of. Therefore, they can easily keep an advantage by simply killing in the designated area for the examination. Carrie reflected in the words of the hero and realized that his words also had a meaning. Suddenly an unexpected incident occurred. A rat appeared behind the back of Carrie, and he was stabbed with a paw. Will have turned out to be the most silent of the guns. His name was Sick wanted to defend his brother. My happier also brought him a blow. He threw it aside, warning him not to intervene. Carrie stood there with a bloody body, but for him it was not. It turned out that his competence of spiritual power turned out to be a natural invulnerability, with the help of which he is able to heal. Unlike vitality, skill, and space crystals obtained from space beings, the culture method is based on the basic principles of culture developed by people. His is why different culture methods determine different culture limits. It has natural vulnerability, and one of the few technique which allows you to immediately access horse class by jumping, deadly and legendary. However, there are rumors that only virgin can follow this path. If you lose your Virginia, all your efforts serve. To matter how you look at him, Carrie does not seem to be the kind of person who would devote a lot of efforts to perfect such competence. Sick described chapter. He cannot believe that he is Murphy to get rid of brother. Carrie had no desire to fight for power with his second brother, but he simply does not happen to this. Who told him that he was himself responsible for what had happened, but now it is too late, and it is starting to do. But he did not appreciate Carrie enough, and he missed his. For this cat shot that invoked her petty explosive legendary pet. Now the battle begins, and Happier strikes him with his dagger, but there he caught with one hand. He did not even suffer from. After that, only fear and confusion could be seen in the eyes of. He rejected several Peters back. By opening the eyes of the life, that Rice also had a legendary level company, and said that the young master respected Carrie also had a room. However, Carrie is not at all like Happier. He will never use a method so term. Happier was in a desperate situation, and all he thought was to run away and hide. But Carrie brothers did not want to let him go and run after. Shock tried to stop him, but Carrie did not listen to him, and continued to run more. Sick called the main character of the pathetic age, because he did not run him. He also added that there was no advantage on his part, and that it was in vain that his brother Carrie took care. Shock actually understood that he cannot help in Chapel and Price of legendary level companions unlike Chuck, so the probability he dies by meeting this monster is very. The hero did not understand what to make his brother help or escape and stay. The guy can only overcome the skeleton general if he finds a way to defeat him. Shock entered the game on his phone and immediately start a battle with the run. There was no point in fleeing it because as soon as it starts hitting the game ends with the death of. However, I start to dodge the general's costs, and he finally lived longer than usual. While they played, they had already collided, and he had no choice but a. Looking at the general's battle, he saw his strength, but next to his horse, there is a blind spot where he can hit. Therefore, perhaps the hero will have a chance to win if he benefits from this opportunity. Signs of struggle began to appear around the guy, which meant that he was already close. By reaching them, it was clear that things were going. And unfortunately, there was a real general skeleton. He was too different from the image of the game. Chappie could stand next to him. It seemed strange. It seems that it does not touch it because of the properties of armor, and it turns out that it is another legendary level companion. It is good to be a rich man after. It looks like Carrie's brother really wants him to die for this X. As soon as the rider saw the intruder, he immediately started at the ATT. However, Carrie managed to protect his men using a shield. It was such a purple blow like a sick Maya side, and Chuck could barely stand sick and tell Chuck to help Carrie, and not worry about him. He was supposed to go. Happier also started to act because it was impatient to see how long Carrie could hold alone against. Of it continues, the rhyme will definitely have. Therefore, the main character decided to help him by holding the monster, but he warned him that he could not resist him for very. Carrie answered without hesitation, which would take 2 minutes the guy did not expect. Happier thought that the mortal wanted to measure his strength with General Skeleton, which meant that he had condemned himself to death. Sugar gathered his strength and was ready to fight the general to give Carrie time to take care of. Hero began to dodge the rider as in the game, and he has. There was already lodging dozens of blows, and it was relaxed at the time. Because of that, he almost lost. In the game, these attacks are classic and predictable, but in general is more to. Shock approached him and decided to knock on the most visible place. But the rider was always the same, there was no scratch on. Sick observed the main character at that time and noticed that he was able to retain the general even without animal companion. Happier also noticed him distracted from the battle with. Because of this error, he missed the most severe blow of his brother. After the Happier blows started to provoke his brother. However, Carrie does not know how to give his provocation to take because he understood that he could no longer be allowed to fight against two people at the same time. Consequently, the only solution to this problem was to destroy the strange armor of. He tried to unravel him, but it did not work, and Sharpie to invoke his snake. It seemed to her that she would help save time as completed the main character. Shock was not a simple man and managed to dodge his blow. When the guy lodged, he saw the weak point of the enemy and hit her with all his might. Fortunately, Chuck with a pet with which he pierced the AR. After the armor broke a small wizard and in pieces. Carrie finished it by crushing it with its. He also told Happy Dead that you were a vet. As soon as General Skeleton quickly it really became. The rider became so fast that Chuck simply did not have time to dodge his. But Carrie managed to take this blow on him, often the main character. Because of this blow, the knight in black armor had almost reached his file. Carrie therefore decided to distract the skeleton, while Chuck had to find a way to wear the blow a. The knight's costume was already on point. Axillary asked the guy. Unfortunately, Shock did not find a weak point and decided to start hitting. Shaken was very powerful, after which he hoped that the rider had it. However, the skeleton came out of the dusty fog without the slightest grain. After that, the general started to fight the fight. They attacked it dozens of times, but there was still no miss. And at that time, Shock realized that his weak point was probably the miss. As he had no choice, Carrie suggested that he take the risk. They were waiting for the right time, and suddenly he arrived. Carry threw the hero, and he struck General Skeleton with all his strength on his crack, following what he broke the. They managed to kill the rider, and after that something fell from. It was an egg with a pet. Carrie watched her and moved away, saying to the guy of him. Without him Carrie and Sick would have already died, so he told him to take this as a thank you for the fact that everything had been resolved with success. The main character accepted with joy from his brother. Unfortunately, Chuck is now mortal. He will therefore not be able to transport a legendary level egg, and he should not treat it irresponsible. Carrie also wondered how he had lived his companion, since thanks to his natural invulnerability, he is in a way capable of controlling the knight in armor. Shock replied to this by saying that this companion belonged to the death class. As a rule, legendary creatures are stronger than deadly creatures, but the lower the creature, the more difficult it is to form an egg. It means that eggs with fatal levels are much less common than legendary those. After that my brother became jealous of the chance of. But now the guy was starting to worry about what he would make the death of. Carrie told him to forget that because he had asked him himself since his brother settled. He also promised him that in their release Chuck could apply safely in any university, and his brother dealt with. The guns returned by the portal was Sick. Carrie dismissed with the examiner and told him what had happened. It was already in the evening, and it was time for the team to say goodbye. The main character did not have a car, and the only option to go home and the bus. However, while the guy was on the bus, it was cold, and probably developed anemia due to a significant loss of. To resolve this problem, he wondered if phosphorus or brown sugar can help him, because these foods contain iron, which can contribute to the loss of. Suddenly a man falls in front. He examined and began to shout hard. He seemed to him that it was of. But fortunately this man was the. His man turned out to be an average man. He said that everything was fine for him, it was just that an old illness yesterday. After that Czech was happy, and was about to leave. However, the man stopped telling him that their meeting was the will of fate, so he wanted to speak to him a little. The main character was not very good at conversations, and the man decided to ask him just a few questions. Shock was already more and more interested, and he remained to listen to him. The man asked him what kind of girl he loved with big or small breasts. Because of this question the guy clearly felt. It was an unexpected question for Chuck, but he answered with assured that he preferred women to the little ones. The old man laughs at his answer because he is also this kind of. He also added that girls with small breasts are the best and only young immature like women who look like milk cows. At the time of this Chuck conversation think of something else. If the chest is too large, maintaining the balance during a fight is much more difficult. After that the man asked him another question. The girl is tender and affectionate or impudent, and which normal person would refuse a cut and choose a rebirth. However, if he continues to say what he wants to hear you, this chatter will never cease. Shock was already tired of this man, because he wanted to go back to his house quickly, washing, changing clothes, eat, and playing. To that the old man leaves him behind him. As quickly as possible the hero decided to choose a daring and sarcastic girl. But suddenly the eyes of man light up with happiness, because it is precisely these women who interest him and fascinate him. For the main character, it was a total failure. Because who would choose a Shock now has a little sister whom he immediately attacks. Chuck did not know how to get rid of him faster, and decided to ask him where he lived, and if he needed help to return to. However, the old man did not listen to the boy at all. He said that the body is the main thing to conquer a girl, and that it has so few was his vitality, that even his good taste will help her. He felt the hero's anger against him, and decided to help him improve his method of culture of spiritual power. Chuck was surprised by the older proposal. You just have to understand it, and with your help the property will be able to make any problematical woman absolutely penny. The method to cultivate the spiritual power, and the conquest of women. Shock to thank the man for such a precious gift, but he was forced to refuse, because he already used a different method. And suddenly the old man says that meditation through suffering. The Treaty of Celestial Lemon is perhaps not a first-rate technique, but it is far superior to meditation by suffering. Now the guy felt frightening because he hadn't told him that he was improving using this method. He said that the hero seems to have very little vitality, but that his body is strong and healthy, and that can only be obtained by meditation through suffering is that the goalkeeper to start, if you do not stopping it will destroy him. Therefore, he told him to adopt the method of cultivating women, since this method was 100 times. When he said it was not without granny, he was generally laughing a guy and. However, Chuck feared that he would have met by chance, and that he could not accept a gift from such. In addition, the guy had never heard of the Treaty of the Celestial Lemon. Of it is a lie, then the old man is only an impostor, but if it is true, then he will give such a precious thing to a person he has just encountered. Then it is difficult to say what to think. After that, the main character said goodbye to the man and go back to. But this was not the case. The old man said to the hero of war. And to his big surprise, Chuck could not move, which caused him anxiety. The man said that none of those who refused Ren had never survived. As soon as the main character heard this name on the part of the old man, he seemed woman to him. It was only after a few seconds that he realized that this name was inscribed in history books. During the largest chaos from to the interdimensional storm, the oldest and bloodthirsty man in history. It is a demon who bathed the Commonwealth. Ren asked him again if he wanted to accept this, which had no choice, and he accepted his proposal against. Although the guy is accepted, the old man felt his heart shouting that he would not learn with this. Chuck masters his skill, he Commonwealth. But suddenly the man said that even if he gave him, he could not get along. He therefore has another very interesting method. And again, I asked him if he wanted to study. Ren looked at him with devil's eyes, and told him to no longer reject the old man's kindness. The main character had no choice, and he chose this method, and the old man gave it to him, and simply part as if nothing had been. Chuck was not in a hurry to leave, and waited for the demon to be out of sight, hoping that he would not watch him. While the guy was held in the street, he managed to. And it was because of this that he abandoned the old man and go home running. In the way, the hero noticed a crowd of people in costume that seemed to him who was looking for someone. They were Commonwealth people. But as Chuck was cold, it did not concern him, and he continued to run it. Finally, the main character returned home, and the first thing he did was to go in the shower. His day was really not the best for Chuck, since there was first an attack on the life of the Judgment, then this meeting with the legendary. But the guy just wanted to play games. He also did not understand what kind of method it was, a blessing or a curse, then he simply knows how to sleep. After a while, when he fell asleep, something terrible began to happen to him, as if he fell from the sky between thousands of hands. At first, he did not realize that he fell. However, when his hands began to grab Chuck, he felt, and woke up very in addition. He started having dizziness, and his heart was beating. At that time, the box that Ren had given him begins to shine, and it was written on it that it was sugar lost immortality. In the morning, Chuck to examine the box, it turned out that there was nothing unusual. For this reason, he began to suspect that all of this was due to when the main character washed his face, after which his clarity of conscience returned, and the discomfort almost disputed. Then, that the guy woke up, he decided that he could go play on the phone. When he entered the game, he saw that General Skeleton was always. Maybe the monsters come from the game, and that in reality, they cannot in any way. So that Shock can try to defeat him at. But unfortunately, the guy was unlucky and lost against. The main character no longer understood what to do to defeat the writer. This boss is much lower than the true, but without the ability of the technical system to maintain his functionality. After the breakdown of one or more of his components, the knight in black armor cannot not defeat him. However, if you simply calculate each movement of the general, there may still be a chance. In any case, It is still a few days before the announcement of the results, and the main character decides to take advantage of this time to try to kill the general. But it requires a lot of blood is the easiest way to. Therefore, he should not have died very often in the game, but before playing he had to shop. When the guy came to the store he bought everything he. After shopping the main character came home, and it was immediately sitting to play. Chuck trained several times on the writer eating all the food in advance. Now he had already acquired experience, and decided to bring the same blow as in reality to have. He destroyed the general, and a level 13 speed spatial crystal falls to. He finally succeeded, and the guy decided to use it to improve his speed until level 13, but he only reached level 9. It seems that 9 is the limit for a mortal that uses meditation through suffering. Everything is as Rand said, meditation through suffering cannot be compared to natural invulnerability. When Chuck no longer understood where to find a higher class method, he could not study the one that the demon had to him. Suddenly the main character remembered his father something. He asked Friant to give the guy a USB key, and each expected something incredible. However, he remembered that his father would probably not be able to give him something valve. But this time France really surprised his son late on the USB key. There was an arc called Drawn on the Sun. Run shooting and natural invulnerability is a method of culture with which you can reach the horse and even superior class. Its main specialization and attack and requirements are not as strict as for natural invulnerability. It was clearly a family inheritance of a powerful person from the Commonwealth. Wondered how his father had put his hand. The idea came to him that it was due to the help of family relationships in. He even thought that his father had killed someone. But it is unlikely because she is not at all this kind of person, and Chuck decided to ask him the question personally. The father took his son's phone, and the guy immediately asked him if all his members were intact. The father got angry and started making fun of his son, after which Chuck realized according to his mood that everything was fine for. Now the jokes were over as the hero told to his father that he had an aerial conversation that asked him how he had obtained the photo of the son, but his father did not understand since he had not at the start. And in general rank is absolutely not interested in cultivation, and where such a thing could find. It turned out that the father did not even think of the main character. Now everything seemed confused to Chuck since Friant had initially told her that it was a gift from her father. The father thought that she had simply decided to give her a gift. After that the main character hung up without saying goodbye, what made France unpleasant. But he was not offended by him, decided to help him by discovering something UT has a good opinion of the family, and Liza gets Friant first cause Chuck at school, and then he almost failed the exam because of the commander is. And only then she decides to give the guy a technique so ras. It would be insane to cultivate using this method until everything is. You started falling asleep when suddenly his heart began to beat faster than usual. 7x, it was definitely not a year. The main character is sure that the demon Ren is responsible for. It couldn't last, and Chuck tried to find something. The guy remembered the box that Ren may have given him, that these health problems could be solved with his. He opened it, and inside was a book, and he begins to naturally. After having read it, he learned what is the link between cooked energy and the magnetic field of the human body. It was really like an introduction to the culture method. By reading the book, the hero did not notice that he had read all day, so he decided to go and eat outside. Shock had already eaten and decided to continue reading them. Put as soon as they are, he realized that he had forgotten where he had stopped. The guy did not linger there for a long time, but it was simply resigned and chose to. However, when he started reading it, he had the feeling of reading this book for the first time. Yes, even if he has a bad memory, he cannot immediately forget something is going here. I start again to read, but suddenly he forgot if he had turned off the light in the kitchen. When he returned to read, he forgot once again absolutely everything he had just. The guy did not give up and start reading them. He concentrated as hard as he could, but managed in one way or another to be list. But he did not stop there either, and tried to take a photo of the book, but the camera did not recognize the text. The lost Austria of immortality has proved to be really very. Suddenly the guy had the idea of leaving the book somewhere far away, perhaps, that after that he could get rid of the nightmare of sleep paralysis. Suddenly an unknown number called on Chu's phone. It was Carrie. He called to find out if the guy had chosen a university in which. Chuck has completely forgotten that the results would be announced very soon, and he replied that he was all the time stuck in the game, and that he did not have time to choose anything. The main character did not have time to choose it. Carrie offered to enter the same university. Axillary decided to register for university. Humor says that if we recently discovered the interdimensional region and interesting creatures is therefore a very good choice. Unfortunately, if Chuck remembers, Lion well went. And as far as he knows, buying, and the family's sphere of influence in. The next day Chuck spent most of the day playing on his phone. In the game he trained by fighting a flying ant. There should have made significant progress now, but for any reason, it always has problems with flying ants on silver wings. All this is due to the fact that they have a huge speed and can also. Suddenly someone started knocking on the protagonist's door. Invited unexpected turned out to be. Carrie entered without warning, as if he entered his own house. And at that time Chuck did not understand why he had come, because the guy told him he would need time to think. However, Carrie came to visit us for a. He gave her the secret data of Lion, and told him to read it carefully. He were talking about being spatial in the form of organs. Similar creatures appeared in the newly opened interdimensional region of Lion. Chuck had trouble understanding why he needed this information. It was a shock for Carrie to see that the guy did not understand what he told her that it was a very unique pet. For example, take a heart. If this creature is destroyed, can immediately become his replacement, that is equivalent to a second. Chuck of course understood everything. He simply did not have by dint of being on. His area is under West administration. It is therefore obvious that only students of this universities will be able to. Of this information is officially made public. The best students from around the world will rush there, but inscriptions are limited. Chuck got up and thought about his brother's proposal. Consequently, he agreed to enter 6 years. It was enough for him to avoid AR. Immediately Carrie also remembered the emphysema family. The main character told his brother that he had nothing to fear, and not to wait. He immediately wrote a candidacy for university. When Carrie told him to quickly suit his bags, and immediately accompany him in his luxury car. At that time the Commonwealth. They started to look at all the images of the camera, and came to the one or a limestone, to cross the community of the community. The young girl from the Commonwealth. It is immediately reported that the hero had definitely been in contact with Tax, so she gave the order to find him. Carrie and Chuck heads towards Quay. The path is 2 times longer because you have to get around your interdimensional areas. In addition, for the moment Chuck cannot progress in the game, so each attempt is a loss of. Now the guy started to have problems. He didn't know what to do on the road. He thought there was nothing wrong with that, and in addition, he had absolutely nothing to do. The main character not just time on the road. By reading this book, Chuck's suddenly the supra of the immortality lost to Wisp. But the guy finally, until the main character has checked his panel, and this one miraculous changed, but he can no longer use meditation by suffering. Chuck especially wanted to know what kind of technique. It was the lost supra of immortality. Surprisingly, 0 leads to exceeding the limit of 9 points set for the deadly class in general. It has now become stronger. While Rice adjusted everything, he offered to stay in the same building until the start of the lessons. The brother was really a very rich man, since he could install them in a huge house. Carrie and shocked to be noticed that there is not a single cleaning lady in her. It was difficult for him to realize that Carrie spoiled himself cleaning such an house himself. Suddenly they called my brother's phone and told him that a new hotel had opened its doors, and he asked you better prepared for him. Carrie begins to leave, and before leaving he tells Chuck that he is supposed to be tired, so it will be better for him if he rests. However, the main character chose training rather than the REP. Its point of then has a very large aptitude of motion, which makes it difficult to apply as much as a stroke of U. The guy tried to use it on flying ants with silver wings, but they have easily laughed. It turns out that he must use other technique to win. At that time, he remembered the palm of the sea. But this technique is at a low school year, and we do not know if it will be useful. Shock decided to try this technique. The realization of this strike showed that it took very little. Unexpectedly, the skeleton pump goes very well with punch and pulse. Although this technique is of the first level, it requires too much spiritual strength. Now the guy wanted to use the same thing in the game. He entered the game, but his spiritual strength was almost zero because of training. Surprisingly, a small part has been restored since the law supra of immortality actually accelerated the restoration of the Chuck vitality struck again with an inch, but this time on the. After that it went from a first level competence to A with skill. The energy consumption of this skill is also 5, and its strength perhaps completely comparable to that of A. The ant was too little health, and Chuck went to General Scott, but he forgot that the game does not start again at the boss you are. Little by little Shock was able to get used to the way the general attack, and thanks to this, he was able to defeat him with the help of a new competence. The next day a girl entered the main character's room and managed to wake him up, and asked him why he was the only one in the house and where was. The girl also added that he was probably still doing the madman somewhere, and that he was still hiding when she came to him could do. The goalkeeper to wake up, and did not even understand who was this, and took her hand, and led him in case she needed. Chuck told him to let him go, because he doesn't even know her. He approached him, and told her that she was her sister. Carrie has helped the hero so much that it probably won't hurt him to reimburse his brother in a way or a. He also started to humble complaining of not having the right to play. Carrie's sister he heard and didn't like it much. But before leaving Chuck must be cleaned a little. The sister and the main character arrived at Quillen University in the arena of pets. By the way, Carrie's sister was called Sonia, and she had a very motorcycle. And told the guy not to worry, and that he had nothing else to do than just take a step back. Chuck listened to him, and how it played on the phone. Suddenly a guy with deadlock arrived with a girl, and said that his brother had not come because he was. Hyundai. This guy started a quarrel because he wants to take the mid-horse's egg that they killed for him. He replied that it was he who had brought the fatal blow, and that he was therefore forced to take the egg for himself. These conversations were useless. He wanted to resolve quickly through a fight in which the winner would win. Since Sonia is in her second year, and Acorn in her fourth, victory will not be fair. Therefore he invited to fight with a classmate. It was Liable, whose face was only covered with scars. Sure area at that time that something was wrong with Liable because he had a very angry expression on his face. He stood on the rain. Liable told Sonia to attack in, and began to prepare for combat using her abilities. The friend of the girl asked him not to fight with him, because this egg was not worth it. Chuck wondered who was this did. A girl who was standing next to him told him that at the university was treated as. There are rumors that Liable beat a th-year student on the first day who wanted to make fun of, which could not believe that this great title was really so strong. Because of this the guy began to doubt the victory of, and launched the attack first, trying to kick her opponent. However, Liable had a powerful defense with which he pushed the cost of the girl. After the unsuccessful and blow decided to use its super acceleration capacity. But for Liable, it was nothing, and it was absolutely. Suddenly he grabbed. And then he began to twist it and throw it into the. Liable begins to approach her and tells her that she was not her opponent. The girl did not stop and said she continues. As soon as she said that, Liable immediately hit her in the face. He finished and she couldn't. However, Wonder gathered all his strength and in others. Liable has seen it got angry, and started swinging on the girl already beats. Chuck, as soon as he saw the swing, immediately defended his brother's sister. Liable had not planned him, and asked him that he was the main character, told him that she was his name, and that from this year he was starting his studies at the university. Of others were simply held aside, and we wanted good luck to the hero with Riddick. When Sonia noticed her protector and told her to leave immediately because it was dangerous, Chuck did not want a sound among people and take the daughter by force. Ant's friends took him to a safe place and asked him about the victim's condition. But at that time, the fight was not finished, and Chuck told Liable that he did not need to fight at full power since no one was able to assume the responsibility for what could happen. He was interested in this idea. He wanted to hear your conditions to continue the battle. Liable was supposed to leave the Gadaniacs, and if he retreated by less than 3 steps each mistress has. He accepted this proposal, and was immediately ready to take the